Hey everybody, it looks like we are live. Give me ma'am a little tug. All right, let's get to all messages here. Let's see, we got Zine Machine, we got Arc Knight, we got Dade, and that's all. All right, well, we got a lot to do tonight, so we're going to get right into it. I forgot to actually feed all the tanks tonight. I wanted to do that before we got started. We're going to feed the pond. I did want to do that, but I wanted to get all the other tanks done and out of the way so I can get them done while you're looking at the pond. But we got some work to do tonight. If you'll notice, the pond is looking a little cloudy. It's actually starting to clear up a bit, but we'll go into that here in just a minute. Talk about the pond and all the work I did yesterday. If I can prevent myself from kicking the camera around. Are you feeling better, Ark? All right, let me find my beloved nicotine to puff on here for a minute. I'm gonna get it around and feed some of the other tanks. Mike. I was honestly expecting more than 5 or 6 people for tonight's live stream. I've been talking about doing a lot of work tonight. Most people like it when I do work. So we'll give it a few minutes. Like I said, I'm sure more people will start filing in here soon. We'll talk about what I did to the pond, and then we'll get started on our work. Oh, that's good to hear. Once you get over the worst of it, the recovery part usually goes pretty quickly. Well, it goes pretty quickly for the most part, right up until you're almost done, and then that lingers for like another month where you're just feeling kind of crappy sometimes. I hate that. You get over the worst of it in a couple of days, and then you just still feel off for another 2 or 3 weeks. Pond puppies, how are you? So speaking of the pond, you'll notice the water is a little bit cloudy. It was actually pretty cloudy last night. I figured it was going to take a few days to clear up, and it actually cleared up quite a lot overnight. I did massive work to it yesterday. I got in there and did a huge water change, about 80% probably. I took the pond down to about 4 inches of water in it, and I kept swishing it and swirling it around, getting all the crud, stirred up so I could pump as much of that out of the tank as possible. When that was done, I cleaned out. I have an internal filter in this pond, if you're not familiar with it, but I haven't changed the filter in so long that I just decided I'll pull the filter material out and just use it as a circulation pump, which is basically all it was doing anyway. But when I pulled it apart, it was so packed full of that like gray sludge that the water was barely moving through it. So I'm assuming that was acting as some sort of biological filtration, and so I literally was like scooping handfuls of muck out of there, and I put it all back together. I just didn't put any filter material in it, so the fish can't get into it. There is a screen that'll prevent the fish from getting sucked down into the pump, but there's no actual filter material. It's just a plastic screen. So I did that. I took the 6-gallon tower down, and I realized that when I installed that, I didn't really clean the glass or anything. It had smudges and fingerprints and watermarks all over the outside of it. So I got that all nice and cleaned up with some Windex inside and out. And then I handled it very carefully by the rim, so I didn't put any fingerprints or anything on it. And I still didn't have any black paint. I did pick up some today, so the next time I do some work, I can actually do paint instead of Sharpie. But I couldn't find I didn't have any black paint, so I took a black Sharpie and went over that purple pole as best I could. It actually looked a lot better. I don't know if some of the black ink is starting to come off in the water or what, but it was completely black as of yesterday. I wish I had thought ahead and actually put some black on the top and in the inside there, so you don't see that giant white dot right in the middle. But again, I have black flat matte primer that I picked up today while I was at the Wally World, my daily trip up to the Wally World. So we'll pull that out. We'll get that all painted up, and you hardly ever, even be able to notice that little pole in there. And so I topped the tank back off, and once I got it topped off, you know how I do the filter with the bucket and the pump and all that. I did 6 filter cycles, throughout the afternoon before I packed up the filter and put everything away. So I always say that all that crud and gunk and stuff that builds up at the bottom, it may look unsightly, but a lot of cases it's doing stuff. There's a lot of biological goodness in all of that. And I think by disturbing it so much yesterday and removing so much of it and, pulling that pump apart and cleaning all that out, I think I knocked the cycle out of whack a little bit. And again, when I filled it back up, I was expecting it to be crystal clear, and it wasn't. It was like almost milky looking. It was so cloudy last night. And, I knew what I did. I knew exactly where it was coming from and why it was looking cloudy. I believed it was going to take a little bit longer to start clearing back up. At this rate, by tomorrow, it'll be completely clear again. So on Sunday night's live stream, you'll get to see, the pond in full clarity. Well, right up until they start feeding, and then they get everything all stirred up and it gets cloudy again. But dirty and detritus and stuff swirling in the water isn't the same as cloudy water. And what I got was cloudy water. It was from, messing with my cycle. But it'll sort itself out easily enough. All right, let's see if we got anybody else to say hello to before we get started. Chef Steve. 150 fry, nice. All right, my tablet is whirligigging. I hope it's happening on your end, but I get terrible reception down here a lot of times, and so me whirligigging is not necessarily a problem. All right, let's give the goldfish their final feeding in the tank that they're in now. That sounds ominous, but we're just moving them into a more suitable habitat. On Sunday night, we'll be putting them in their new home. Hopefully it will be their forever home. It'll be a 60-gallon tank that I'm getting from a neighbor tomorrow. But tonight we have to get this tank broken down. We have to move the fish to a holding tank. And then tomorrow I'm actually going to take this dresser. Me and the missus are going to get rid of that. And then we're going to, when my neighbor brings over the tank, it's going to have a stand. So we're going to put the stand up. We're going to put the tank on it. And then I'll be able to put my shrimp tank on the stand underneath of it. So that's what we're going to be doing on Sunday night, is working on this tank or the new tank that's going to be here. Tonight, what we're going to be doing is getting the discus out of my other 40. We're going to put them into my big discus tank. We're going to break that tank down, do a cleaning, get it all prepped up and ready. And when it's ready to go, we're going to move these goldfish into that tank. And then I can start breaking this tank down to get out of here tomorrow. And I got all kinds of ideas about what I want to do with this 40 over here. Once, again, it's going to be a holding tank for the goldfish for the weekend. But after they get moved over on Sunday night, then I've got another 40 breeder that's going to be wide open and empty. And so the thoughts are a-rolling. All right, let me see where it was. Rosie, how are you doing? Most people probably watch on their phone anyway. Steve, you made it. So yeah, the discus that are currently in the 40 that I use as my base station, those discus are getting moved into the 125-gallon discus tank. The minnow that's in there is just going to get chucked in the pond, because why not? And then that's all that's in that tank is those 3 fish. So we'll get them out of there, put them in the ponds. Once that's empty, like I said, we'll do a vacuuming and a cleaning and all that kind of stuff, get the tank prepped, and then we can move these goldfish over into that tank for the weekend. And then I'll get this all cleaned out and ready to go for Sunday. And then on Sunday night, we'll be filling and scaping out a 60-gallon tank to put these guys back into. So they're going to be in the same spot. They're just going to be in a bigger tank. Not really sure how to scape that one out. That's the tank I'm going to be working on first, since we're going to be putting it together Sunday. And I haven't even really thought about that tank yet. I got all kind of ideas for this 40 over here. I've been researching fish size and all that kind of stuff, but I have yet to decide on what I want to do with it. I think I am going to, and I know this is going to surprise the hell out of all of you, I think we're going to go with an open top tank over there. I'm no longer going to use it as my base station. I'll have to set something else up for that whenever I can figure that out later. I moved all my fish food off of it so that we can work on it tonight. And I got to remember, I'm going to start keeping my fish food over here. That's going to fuck me up for 6 months until I get used to it. All right, we're going to start with the crisps real quick. And again, we're going to go around with the feeding really quickly. I wanted to do this earlier, and I guess technically I can just kind of get ahead of you guys. You don't have to look at every tank tonight. We do have a lot to do. My mushrooms are already starting to kick in, but I wisely split it into 2 phases. I drank about a third of my tea at about 20 after 7, so that's kind of coming on to me now. And then I saved apparently maybe I drank about half of it, and then I'm going to polish off the other half here shortly, and that should give me a little bit of time to do some responsible fish keeper stuff before I start feeling all mushroomy. I still don't think I'm going to have any problem, even if I am feeling mushroomy. I'm not doing anything complicated. Flameback cichlid, I'll have to keep that in mind. I'm still looking for fish. Hey, Shirley. What's going to happen to the current 40? That is going to go into storage where the 40 that I gave my neighbor was already sitting. It worked out great. He's looking to get rid of his 60. He just wanted to downsize it. He didn't want to get rid of his fish. He just wanted to get a smaller tank. And so he asked me if I knew anybody that had a 40. I was like, yeah, dude, I got a 40. So he picked up my spare 40 that was sitting in the other room for years. So he's using that now to get that set up. And once that's set up, he can break down his 60. And then, so it all just worked out perfectly for everybody. I didn't have to break down my 40 first. I already had a spare 40 sitting in the other room. And so when this one gets broken down, it was nice for a few days to have the open space on the floor on the other side of the basement, but it's just going to get replaced by this 40, unless somebody local wants it. Shipping it wouldn't be any point, but if somebody wants a 40 and lives nearby, you can have it. I already asked Kane. He said that he might take a 10. I've got a spare 10. I've got a spare 20 long I'm looking to get rid of if anybody's local. And then I'll have this spare 40 if anybody wants to get rid of them. I think at this point in my life, I don't need to worry about hanging on to all these fish tanks like I'm going to do anything else with them. Anything else that happens in my fish world is probably going to be on the scaling back size rather than adding more. I ain't getting any younger. Every year, my wife gets out there and makes the gardens bigger and expands the beds and adds new beds. And every year I look at them thinking, like, every year we get older and older and it gets harder and harder to take care of all this shit. And simultaneously, every year there's more and more shit to take care of. Like, at some point, we got to stop. Oop. Getting ready to go put the food away over there again. Got to remember it's got a new home. Cecil, how are you this evening? Yeah, I definitely want to get some Bosmani. But not for that tank. I'm waiting for my current rainbow fish to die in my Anahop, how are you? Or Hanabop, sorry. So I'm waiting for the rainbow fish I have in my discus tank to die off, and then I want to get some Bosmani in there. Those were supposed to be Bosmani. I went down to get Bosmani, and they didn't have any that day. And I saw those albinos that just were jaw dropping, and so I came home with them instead. So that will be the Bosmanis. But my 40 is, it's too big for me to do like a small cichlid, like something. I'm not going to get a German blue ram, but a keyhole. There's a lot of those small cichlids that would look cool in there, but that's a lot of tank for just a couple of fish. I mean, I guess I could add a school of neons and maybe a catfish or something in there. But I want to do something different this time. I want to get like a nice big display fish. I want it to predominantly be the fish in the tank. Again, depending on whether it's predatory or not, maybe I could have some neons, little school of neons in there swimming around or something with it. But I want a big showy fish, like that's the fish in this tank. And then, oh yeah, I got a rubber lip pleco in there too or something, I'm leaning really hard towards a Polypterus or a Bashir. Those are just fucking awesome. I really like them. I've always wanted one, but every time I've looked into getting one, I always come away with, I don't really have a tank set up for one. I could do it from scratch since I got, I'm starting, but it's only 40 gallons. And I don't think 40 is big enough for a lifespan of one of these Polypterus. And I don't want to get one, keep it for 2 years and then have to get rid of it or find a home for it or something. I know how that shit goes. You always buy fish for the tank you have, not what you're planning on doing down the road. So I think a 40 is a bit small. I looked at some different videos. I saw everything from Corey at Aquarium Co-op has a video from 7 years ago where he says a 29 gallon is big enough for a Senegal. I think just right off the top of my head, no, that's way too small. I heard somebody else say that a 55 is kind of reasonably the smallest you could go with, but recommends larger. And then I saw, of course, everything from, minimum of 90 to 125. These things get huge, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure what to make of that. If Corey's saying they can go in a 29, a 40 should certainly be big enough. But I don't know. I think a 40 is kind of small for a Polypterus. And of course, I also want to have it open top. And it's been recommended that not only are they jumpers, but they're also climbers and they can actually climb out of your tank. They're one of those fish that has a crude lung. And as long as they stay moist, say it with me, moist and warm, they can live on land indefinitely as long as they don't dry out or get too cold. So I just don't really think I've got a tank for the Polypterus. I thought about putting one in this tank because I thought it would look amazing, and there's nothing really small enough in there for it to eat, but it's an open top tank. It's every tank I've got, there's always a problem. The other issue was I saw a couple people suggest that keeping certain kinds of plecos with Polypterus can be problematic because the plecos will actually attach to the side and they'll scrape at the slime coat and all that. So I don't know. I'd like to get one, but I just don't think it's right for me. So we'll see. I've got ideas. Hamilton, how are you? All right. Mike, I'm not sure if I said hi to that Mike or a different Mike, but I'll say hi again just in case. Cornish, how are you? That is true, Steve. But with my idea, Chef Steve, that is, my idea with less lawn to mow is just let the woods encroach, just let the amount of shit between our house and the neighbor's house just get thicker and wider. And I'll have less lawn to not really mow because I have more moss than grass. But I do have to mow the lawn a few times a year. It usually just tears all the moss up and throws it around because I live in the fucking woods and I don't get any sun. But instead of garden beds that need to be tended and taken care of, I'd much rather just let the woods expand. No, Dade, I'm going to be able to take the little shrimp tank and put it on the rack underneath of the 60. So it's going to stay in the same area. That was one of the things I was concerned by. I didn't want to use up that entire 4-foot dresser for a new tank, because then I'd have no place to put that shrimp tank. And so the idea of having the stand there, the stand will have the rack underneath of it. It'll look less much of an eyesore as that big dark brown wooden dresser that's sitting there. It'll look more like a fish stand. And then I will also be able to put the shrimp tank directly below it, and everything will fit. All right, Cornish, I said hello already. How big are Oscars? Oscars can get like 10 inches or a foot or something. Yeah, I've always wanted an electric blue Acara too, Shirley. Yeah, I looked into the ornate and I immediately saw that they get like 2 feet long. Yeah, that's a bit much for a 40. He'd have to lay around the tank. I've given up on the German blue rams. I really, really like them a lot, but I just don't have any luck with them. I've never kept one alive longer than about 9 months. Although I think the last one I got shockingly lived almost a year or something. And I was really starting to think like I'd finally got one that was going to not die. And then it did. All right, let's get this one fed. It's almost 8:30 already. I keep forgetting we got a lot of shit to do tonight. So Hamilton, I said hello already. I think the fish you were asking about, Anna, was a Polypterus or a Bashir. I actually found out you can pronounce it either Bashir, Bashir, or Biker. And actually, Biker, I think, is the most correct, but you can pronounce it any of those ways, and that is acceptable. I say Bashir since that's just how I heard it, and I've just always said it that way. Yeah, I thought about the discus tank with the Bashir too, Zini, but it's got plecos in there, and it's kind of an open top, but not really. Australian lungfish, is that what they call them? That's true. I could do the tower. I could put a 10-gallon tower in each section of the 125. Hello, Eugene. How are you this evening? Surviving shrimp. Bobby, how are you? Oh, pea puffers are awesome. That's another fish that I really love, but I never really had a success with, so I stopped getting them because I just felt like I was bringing them home to let them die. Frank Gorshin killed the GBI. Yeah, Bolivians are a lot easier to care for, but they're also a lot less striking and sparkling and beautiful. All right, let me see. Just trying to get caught up on comments here. We're going to move along in a second. And somebody could stop sign me if they want right there. I was thinking about another puffer briefly. Anna Zini has a puffer that I think is amazing, and I considered getting something like that. But I don't know. I already did a puffer. I had Butterbean for over 10 years. And I know this sounds stupid, but I feel a little guilty keeping puffers as fish. I feel a little guilty keeping any fish because they're just kept in these little glass boxes and have nowhere to go. They just swim in circles all day, banging into shit. It feels kind of like keeping a dog in a really small kennel or something. It just feels cruel to like box these fish up. Most fish, you know, whatever, they're fish and it's not that big a deal. But with puffers, puffers really feel like you're putting a dog into a small kennel. A lot of people have equated puffers to being the closest thing you'll ever get to having a puppy in a fish tank, and they really are like that. They just seem really intelligent. I felt bad for Butterbean. He seemed like he was bored. Whenever I came in the room, he would follow me around, watching me like he was looking for my attention or interested in what I was doing. And I always felt like I just, turn around and walk on out of the room because he's a fish. But I felt like I was neglecting him or something. I just imagined like him getting sad as I walked away because like he was hoping I was going to come interact with him or something, and I just didn't. And I don't know. I don't need that kind of emotional stress for keeping a fish. I'm enough of a flake as it is. I don't need that kind of extra pressure. Look at all them stop signs. Thank you, everybody. All right, Mike, if you're still there, say good night. Bob. All right, I am caught up again. So let's, well, I just put you there. So we'll give you a minute on this tank. We'll move on to the next one. Like I say, we got a lot of work to do tonight. So we're not going to put a lot of focus on the feeding. But I was watching the fish for a little while last night while I was in here working on the pond. And the Buenos Aires tetras in there really seemed like they were engaging in spawning behavior. So I'm wondering if we're not going to see some little small Buenos Aires swimming around in there pretty soon. They seem to breed more readily than the diamonds do, but I definitely get breeding from both of them in this tank. This is just like a self-sustaining tank. I haven't had to add fish to it for years because they just keep reproducing and enough survive that they sort of gradually replace the older ones that die off. And I have more of them in there now than when I stocked it up years ago. That's pretty sweet. All right, it's 8:30. I'm going to engage in phase 2 of my mushroom drink here tonight. Once this kicks in, it should be pretty solid because I did 1.4 grams tonight. All right, phase 2, engage. Now the clock's ticking. Got to get some shit done now. In fact, let's move on to the next tank. We're going to rush through this. I'm assuming most of you tuned in to see tank work rather than me feeding my fish once again. Keep forgetting I'm putting my fish food different places now. I got to find it every time. I told you it's going to take me a month to get used to that. I don't think we're going to bother feeding the 40 just yet, and we'll skip feeding the discus tank too. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just feed the 20 gallon with the fuck's that fish called, the betta fish in there. Get that done. Throw some food at the shrimp. Go in the bathroom, throw some food at those shrimp. Take that, shrimp. Come down here and throw some food at these shrimp that I forgot to. Well, I kind of more have to sprinkle the food for these shrimp because I can't just throw it in there. But in spirit, we can imagine I did. And I'm going to throw some food at 29. Bam! Take that, 29. All right, figure out where to put the food. This is going to become an interesting tank experience if I don't get it done by the time phase 2 kicks in. It's phase 1 I didn't think was hardly even going to be noticeable. I figured it was going to be more like an hors d'oeuvre. But phase 1 is pretty solid here already, so we'll see what happens when phase 2 rolls on. All right, let me see where I was. Well, I would agree with the bug, the insect. I can't imagine them seeming smart. I have praying mantises. They just look at anything that moves. Butterbean seemed pretty smart, though. Yeah, I like the loaches in this tank. Salient One, how are you doing? No, I actually just threw those fruit fly cultures away last night when I was in here cleaning up. I'm doing well enough. I didn't really use them. Every time I opened it up, they got out and they were crawling around the place and it stunk. And, you know, there's a reason I don't do frozen foods and live foods and all that stuff. Just opening a thing of dry flakes and sprinkling them in the tank is the way to go for me. All right, let's get started on this work. I should probably smoke some weed first, though. Let me do that. I'll do a dab. Red Ed, how are you? Oh, and I forgot there was a Wednesday members only private live stream. But on Wednesday, when we were in my 29 here, we did find one of my striated bodias had passed away. So I looked it up and it fell within the average lifespan. They live 10 to 15 years, and I had it for probably, oh, wow, I bumped the. I got to really move this damn cursor out of the way. Every time I tap my touch tab, my touchpad, it asks, brings up a thing I'm trying to do. I had it on end stream, and when I bumped it, it asked me, "Are you sure you want to end the stream?" So I almost just canceled on you guys. So, all right, give me a minute here. We'll do a dab, and then we'll get started on tearing this tank down. The first thing we're going to do is get this tank torn down. We're going to catch the fish out of it. Well, first I'm going to remove all the shit to make it easy to catch the fish. Then we're going to catch the fish. They're going to go in the 125 over there with the other discus. And then once this tank's empty, we'll get it cleaned out, drained, filled, and then I can move my goldfish over into this tank. And then that'll be what our goal for tonight is to ultimately get the fish, the goldfish into this tank. So in the meantime, let me turn on my little seahorse here, get it into the warm-up mode. I'm going to do a session. And Steve and I were talking about how fast the battery drains down on this, especially when you do these long session modes. I have just taken to stop thinking about it as like an all-day thing that I can just take with me and just do dabs throughout the day. I figure after 2 or 3 sessions, it's time to recharge it. And since I'm usually sitting in my basement and, I've got the charging stuff right there, I just, every couple of sessions, I put it on the charger and charge it back up. after like 3 sessions, it'll take an hour and a half to charge it again. So it's definitely worth keeping charged up. But if I was going out on the kayak, I would definitely take a spare, a battery bank with me or something to make sure I could top it off throughout the day, because you don't get a lot of, sessions out of that before you run that battery down. All right, I think I am ready. Let us begin this ordeal. I don't really feel like doing this, but let's do it. Been looking forward to it all night. Now that it's time to start doing it, I'd really rather just sit down and hang out. Isn't that always the case? Well, I drank a bunch of psilocybin mushroom tea there, Salient, so I figure disco lights are appropriate tonight anyway. All right, we can get this first light out of the way completely. Set that over here. The front part of this hood doesn't even connect, so we can put that over here as well. Get rid of this. I suppose I should put some water in the bucket. No, we don't need to worry about that. The fish can go straight into the other tank when I catch them. All right, so this can come out, but the light needs to kind of stay on there. I'm going to drop something in this tank before the night's over. All right, let's set the light like that. Let's put this in the other room. This is pretty gross. It's got all that growth on the underside of it, so we're going to stick that in the shower. All right. Put a little more light on the scene for you. And now, sorry about this discus fishies. They're already freaked out enough being in this tank as it is. That's why I'm taking them out of here. It's got the plant still attached to it, growing. This has got a bunch of hair algae and all kind of shit growing on it. I think we can just pull all that off and throw it away. There's another nice size rock. I don't mess around when I put rocks in my tanks. Speaking of which, I stuck this rock in the middle of that root to hold it down. I love that rock. I like the way it's got like a concave sort of bottom to it. And this, I think, is actually rooted to the bottom. Oh, damn it. It's pretty well rooted into the bottom, but I was hoping it was rooted to this piece of wood. I don't know if you've ever seen that piece of wood that's in there, but it's pretty awesome. All right, I think that ought to be enough for now. We can work around the plant. That shouldn't be too difficult. All right, that's both discus in one swoop. All right, the discus are now in their new home. Now let's catch that minnow out of here. Minnow is probably going to be a little more challenging. Might need 2 nets for the minnow, or possibly not. Got him. All right, the minnow's in the pond. And I did have a couple of, there's one. I did have a couple of these little gambusia swimming around in here. And this, I just caught one of them. So he can go in the pond. And let's see, do I have another one? I thought there was, oh yeah, there's the other one. Did I get him? I did not. All right, tank is now empty. Now, of course, I need this bucket to do a water change, but it's all full of shit. Let me go try to find another bucket, dear Eliza. I had a bunch of spare buckets, but I filled them all up with salt. That was a hell of a score, but still, I'm running low on buckets now. Here's one. Never mind, I got a bucket, dear Eliza. All right, let's move this over here. It's all the rocks and everything out of the tank. And now I'm going to slurp a bunch of that crud out of there, and then we'll do a regular water change on it. So much crap just on the bottom of this tank. It's got a canister filter on it, but it seems to be pretty useless. I'm going to take the canister filter off at the very least. If I do wind up having some kind of filtration on this tank, it's going to be, you know, hang on the back or something simple. I might put a small sponge filter in there or something for the biologicals if I need to. But we're definitely getting rid of this stupid canister filter. It's just too much. It's the way the stand sits and the canister filter sits underneath of it. It just doesn't really, you know, it's not easy to access, and it's just more of a pain in the ass than I think it's worth. The problem is this tank sits so close to the wall, it's kind of hard to put a hang on the back behind it. That's why I've got the canister on there, because all you need is room for a couple of hoses to run out the back. All right, I think we're going to do one scoop like this to get a lot of the crud out of there. And then when we do a water change, I'll just stir everything up and we'll just drain all the cruddy water out and then fill it back up. All right, that can sit there for the time being. Come back with the hose. I guess before I even stir the water up, I can do a scrunchy sort of gravel vac with this one. Let me go ahead and turn this filter off. Let me actually unplug this filter, figure out where it's plugged in. Well, that quietens in the room down a lot. All right, let me get this water change flowing. All right, man. This phase one's anything to go by. Phase two is going to be a fucking doozy. Yeah, this will get a lot more out because I don't have to worry about sucking the sand and stuff off the bottom. It'll just be a lot slower. '40s are like the best size for open top tanks for looking down into. I like the nice 18-inch depth to them rather than the narrower tanks. And give me a minute to go over some of the more visible stuff, and I'll get caught up on comments and whatnot in a moment. We're basically going to drain this down completely and then just go ahead and refill it. And it doesn't have to be super clean. We're just housing the goldfish in here for the weekend till I get that other tank set up. And then we're going to tear this down again completely and rescape it and everything else. I'm probably going to leave the substrate in here. I think what I'm going to do is I want it planted. And I think at the very least, if I have an open top, I'm going to want an emergent type plant growing out of it. Something like maybe a water wisteria, or maybe if I could find even something like some dwarf cattails, sedges, rushes, maybe something like that growing out of it, I think would look awesome. And so I'm going to need a substantial substrate for the roots to really establish and hold a plant upright. I had that problem before with my water wisteria. Was it would grow upright, it would look beautiful, but it would just, the weight of it, it would just fall over because it didn't have enough substrate to really root itself in substantially. And so I always had to like tie it up and prop it up and all this crap. And so with this is already a planted substrate, and it's mostly sand. I think I started by putting sand in this tank, and then I decided I didn't like it. It was the Eco Complete sand, so it's all the same stuff. But then I went and added some of the regular Eco Complete, which added some of the larger, more gravelly bits of the substrate and whatnot. Ooh, I shouldn't let that go up there, but I guess it's too late. No, it went through. That's fine. Thought it was just going to go in there and clog. It was a chunk of the Anubias rhizome that looked like it was rotten. So if I leave this substrate here, it's fairly dense because it is mostly sand, as I said. And then I can take the substrate that's in the goldfish tank over there, which is like river gravel, like real river gravel I collected myself from a river. So it's not all like the smooth pebbles and everything. I could use something like that, or I could just add, aquarium substrate over it, just the aquarium gravel, something cheap. But I think I'm going to leave what's in here for the depth of it, and that'll give me a good planted base. All right, I think I got most of the more egregious stuff out of there. So let me get caught up on some comments here. Get out of the blinding light. All right, let me see where I was. All right, I was probably somewhere around here. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Let's see. I do have a lot going on, Eugene. Yes, Bob, I did take Zini's suggestion and put them in with the elder discus. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it too. I haven't even glanced over that way since they went in there. I got a lot going on right now, so bear with me. Yeah, I hope they get along too. I guess we're going to find out. Zane, thank you. Neil's in. All right, thank you, Zane. All right, I am now officially caught up, and I am fucking zooming on those mushrooms. This is going to be a fucking when that second half of that drink kicks in, this is going to be wild. I keep reading about how unpredictable it is from one mushroom to the next. You can't really ever gauge on strength. Every mushroom's their own, and that seems to certainly be the case. I actually had to get up from my nap today, my pseudo nap. I was trying to nap, but it never actually happened. And one of the thoughts that I had, one of the ideas that popped into my head was the idea that I could do an extraction of the psilocybin. I mean, I dissolve it into water when I make my tea, right? You just evaporate the water away, and what do you have left? And I couldn't get that thought out of my head. And so I did some research, and sure enough, I could use alcohol, or I could do it just like I'm doing an extraction with the hash oil. But when it all like goes away and whatnot, you end up with just like crystals, like a white powder of, it's not pure because of, you have to distill it down and do all kinds of shit to it to purify it. But you basically get psilocybin powder out of it, and they do this for medical purposes so that they have controlled doses, and they know there's no other compounds with it, and that sort of thing. And so I don't have any need to do that, because once I've made it into a glass of tea, I just swig it down. It's not like I got to make it into cool, mushroom hash oil stuff. But I could, if I wanted to, just powder that stuff and carry around a pound worth of mushrooms in a little fucking vial or something. I don't know. I think it'd be neat, but it was just an idea. All right, I guess I should probably take the plumbing out of here too, since we're not even going to be using this hang on the back filter. Well, first let me get this bucket out of my way. I actually did sit-ups tonight for the first time in God knows how long. I didn't do too bad either, considering I thought I was going to do 3 and be crying, but I certainly couldn't do them like I did before, but I did a lot better than I was expecting. I'll probably pay the price tomorrow. All right. Still have so much work to do. It's not like it's hard work. It's just going to be time consuming. We got to let this whole thing drain, and we got to fill it back up. Then we got to move the goldfish over. I guess technically once the goldfish are moved over, we don't have to do anything to the goldfish tank. I don't have to empty that tonight or, anything specific. I can do that tomorrow. So I guess we're coming around the bend if you think about it. And I also think I'm going to leave the plumbing in here. It's got water in it, and I'm not messing with all that tonight. It'll be harmless enough just sitting there turned off. Let's see if it does leak. Oh yeah, it's definitely going to leak. It's got water all the way up to the top of it. So we're going to leave that alone for now. I don't feel like screwing with those. Again, it's just difficult to pull the canister out. Now let's see if I can do this. I don't have to be gentle because there's no fish to scare. All right, there we go. That wasn't so hard. All right, I will also have a small Sun canister filter available if anybody wants one, because I'm not going to do anything with that, and I know it's just going to sit on my shelf for God knows how long until I don't need it anymore. Let's get the heater unplugged too now that I'm looking at it. It's trying to run right now. I'm glad I noticed that. All right, we're good. The tank can just sit here and drain. And I'll come around and collect a few of the larger snails out of here just to feed some of my other fish, because why not? Threw a few snails in the goldfish pond this morning. I'll throw these in the 29 for the loaches. So we'll throw all them in the 29. I wonder if this is just like the early phase 2 starting to roll on for me, because this thing's really intense for the little bit I drank in the beginning. And yes, I'm aware that the joint went out a long time ago. I'm just busy right now. I know I'll never get it all, especially by doing this, but I'd love to be able to get all these little wisps of that green hair algae out of here. I'm sure it's still growing on something or attached to something. It's probably growing attached to the Anubias. There's a big chunk of it. Yeah, it's all caught up with the gravel and whatnot. There's no way I'm going to get all this shit out of here. All right, where was I? When I make my mushroom tea, I put it in one of those little like pulse coffee grinders where you push the button down, the 2 little blades spin around, and I chop it up into almost powder. It doesn't have to be fully powder. There can be some little chunky bits in there or whatever, but for the most part, I chop it up really fine, and then I let it steep for about 20 to 30 minutes. 20 minutes, I think you got everything out of there. Probably 15 if you're going to chop it that fine, but I always do a minimum of 20 minutes. Live stream aquariums, how are you? I forgot the disco lights were on. All right. They do reflect nicely off the dome there. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about the fact that the goldfish would eat any of the algae that's in there over the next few days. But the goldfish we're putting in there are only temporary. I've got some fancy goldfish in a 40 down here that need a bigger home. And so we're going to do that on Sunday. In the meantime, I need to put them somewhere so I can break that tank down, get the stand out of there, clear out the space, put the new tank in. And then on Sunday, they're going to go back to their new home. But tonight, we're just getting this tank ready for them to go in and spend the weekend. So it's getting down there. I guess we don't have to drain it. I got most of the crud out. A couple of more big snails. Throw them in the pond. I'm telling you, it's nice having a pond in your basement. It's amazing. the number of things that you can legitimately just like chuck in the pond to get rid of without actually being, anything wrong with it. It's not bad that I'm throwing my snails in there. I throw my duckweed in there. I can throw any like weeds and floating plants, any of that in there. It's like a garbage dump. Those goldfish eat everything. I've also got a bowl that's filled with super silver haze and then soaked with Tropicana Cookies hash oil on the weed. On the weed. All right, I think we got everything done feeding wise. I did take the Anubias out of this tank earlier today and some other pieces of Anubias. And I was given a suggestion by a friend of mine that I could put the Anubias. I was saying the other night how I didn't, whether I wanted to throw them away because they had so much algae growing. Bacteria growing on them, or if I was going to sell them. So what I did was, you got a good look at that with the disco ball lights on, didn't you? What I did was I rinsed everyone off. I did the whole every single leaf under the running water, and I cleaned them off as best I could. Then I sprayed them with hydrogen peroxide. And so the leaves are fairly clean. And now I'm going to throw them in my shrimp tank in the bathroom. Or I might even, let's just throw them in the shrimp tank down here because I got a lot more shrimp in this tank. And his suggestion was that the shrimp will actually clean any cyanobacteria on their algae or whatever. The only thing I'm concerned about with throwing them in this tank is that they're going to get covered in the Java moss here. Well, I guess we can eliminate that problem by doing this. All right, now I'm going to have to do something with this Java moss. I'm going to throw this in a bucket or something because it's almost impossible that I didn't just scoop up shrimp in with that. So that'll give the shrimp water to move out of. And then I can just throw that Java moss away once I make sure there's no shrimp actually in that bucket. All right, I'm going to grab the water and start filling the tank back up while I'm standing here because it's close enough. We don't have to drain it completely. I just wanted to get a good chunk of that old water out of there. It's been a long time since I've done a water change on that tank anyway. I know it seems weird for a discus tank. And I am going to get the water roughly up to room temperature. I know they're goldfish, but I don't want to shock them with a huge temperature change any more than I have to, even though I do believe that with the goldfish, I could just put them from, 72 degrees into 50 degrees, and they'd probably be fine. I don't think that sudden change would bother them all that much. But just in case it does, I'm not going to do that to them because it's easy enough to not do that. So let's just not do that. A little smoky ambiance in the tank. Tripping over the microphone stand. Looks weird, doesn't it? Remember when this was Butterbean's tank? That seems like a long time ago when it was Butterbean's tank. All right. Let's see if I'm missing any comments. Exactly. It's just a little vacation for the weekend. They're staying in a Airbnb, and then they're going back to go to their new home after it's been renovated. Yeah, I kind of wondered about that, Ark, whether the shrimp would really be able to scrape, the surface of the uh, leaves clean, because we're down to the point where it's just that black, it's almost like black tar on the leaves themselves. It's not growing proud of the leaf. It's not growing off of the leaf. The leaves are just kind of black with that coloration. I couldn't even rub it all off with my thumbs. So I really don't know if shrimp are qualified to scrape that clean or not, but it'll be interesting to throw it in there. It's got to stay in a watery home with light on it to keep it alive, because eventually it's probably going to go into this tank. I don't know exactly what we're going to do with this yet, scape wise, but I've got 3 big chunks of Anubias, and it's 2 different species of Anubias. We've already got some rooted Anubias in here, and so I don't see why we couldn't just stick with that theme. And Anubias is also another plant that, if given enough time, if you're patient enough, will quite readily grow up and out of your aquarium. Right now, it gets a little burnt up with this bright lights on it because it's not a really bright light plant. But I got 3 big flower bracts on it right now. And again, I've showed people this before. If you look at the size of that rhizome down there, it's just absolutely massive. And I love the way these leaves look when they're backlit. They're so cool looking. So not too many people get to enjoy their Anubias from this perspective. But I always do. Every time I come back here, I always stop and take a few minutes to look through these Anubias leaves. They're awesome. And of course, you can see the root mass goes all the way down. I'm not sure whether that is where they originate. I think that's where they originate, but there's a fork and a branch, and there's also another big chunk of Anubias that goes down into this corner too. And I don't know if that's the actual, I think this is the original piece, and it goes up and over. And I think this is a secondary, just a separate little plant growing in there. So I think this is the big one that is ultimately all of this. So if we're patient, and we just put some Anubias in this 40, have an open top with the light above it, we might very well get some good emergent growth just with the Anubias. I might not have to put any other plants in here at all. So far, the only plants I'm thinking of are the Anubias. I'd like to put some crypt in here, but we know what happens to a tank when you put crypt in it. Do I want to see crypt, or do I want to see the fish, or do I want to be in there gardening constantly to keep the tank clean enough that I can actually see the fish and, constantly removing the crypt because it grows out of control. On the other hand, it's awesome and I have plenty of it. It's free. So the Anubias, that crypt, and then I was thinking I'll have to eventually buy something because I want something that's going to grow emergent. As I said earlier, maybe some cattails or, at the very least, some water wisteria, a flowering plant that's going to grow up and out of the water. So I will have to go buy some kind of plant, but I think I can get away largely with what we've already got here. So, all right, while we're waiting for that to fill up, there's not a lot of action going on there. Let's go ahead and get the poor disc tank fed. I wanted to put that off until we got the fish in there. Now that we have, let's go ahead and get them fed. The fish probably aren't even going to make an appearance. You probably won't see them until at least Sunday night. It might be a few days before they come out and show their faces. They're going to be terrified, and they got plenty of places to hide. I can't count the number of times just during a live stream, all the fish would go lay low after feeding time, and people would join the live stream and ask me if there was are there any fish in that tank behind you? Like, yeah, there are, trust me. All right, damn, I keep forgetting I moved that food. It's down here now. Got it. Can't wait till the time I take the food back over to the open top tank and just plop it into the water. All right, I'm gonna have a look around, see if I can't find those fish hiding in there somewhere. There's a group of mollies all huddled together like they're scared. So I just think the whole vibe of the tank has been changed because there's new fish in here. I don't see them in the Tiger Lotus. Of course, I dropped them at the other end of the tank, and it's in all likelihood they're just still somewhere laying low down at this end of the tank somewhere. Oh yeah, I can see some orange color reflecting off of glass down in the bottom corner. So they just went straight into the corner where I dropped them, and they must be just hiding down there because I don't even see them. I just saw a little glint of orange reflecting off the end panel. So they're probably in there somewhere. All right, let me find my nicotine again. All right, that second glass of mushrooms are definitely starting to kick in now. Oh yeah. Coming down the home stretch. All I gotta do is get those goldfish moved over. And that's it. That's the last of my responsible fish keeperness I have to be tonight. I can just hang out. Oh yeah, I can see him. I don't know if you guys will be able to see him or not. If you look way back in that corner on the bottom along the edge, you can just get a glint of orange every now and again. So that's where they are. They're just hiding way back in that corner back there. So they'll adjust. They're just new fish. Yeah, I can actually see them. That's one of them right now. I'm pretty sure that's one of them. Yeah, that's definitely one of them. Holy shit, that fucking second glass of mushrooms is fucking rolling over me. Wow, that just came on fast. God damn. All right. Stay on target. Stay on target. We got a tank filling. Almost there. Catching the goldfish will be easy enough. Water temperature feels fine. I'm starting to do that thing where I feel like I'm standing still when I walk and the room is just moving around me. Oh, reading this is going to be a challenge too. All right, let me see where I was. Did we lose audio? Looks like we got audio. Hey, TK, how are you this evening? All right. I thought about foraging for an emergent plant, Anna, but this time of year, I don't think I really want to do that. And another good place to go for people, if you're, thinking about doing an open top tank with emergent type plants, you don't have to go to an aquarium center where everything's overpriced because it's for your aquarium. Go to a garden center or a nursery or something in the summertime. Usually from March through September, they have, fish and pond plants, and you can buy snails there. You can buy frogs and tadpoles. Now, it's all sort of geared for larger ponds. You're not probably going to want to buy a tadpole. I mean, unless you want to raise one just for the fun of it and then let it go somewhere. But you can get all kind of stuff for your aquarium at a garden center. Aquarium Boss Canada, how are you doing this evening? Yeah, the orange are already in there, Zini. Yeah, they'll be fine once they get going. They'll have to reestablish a pecking order. and, you know, get used to being in the new tank. The new fish will have to accept them and all that kind of stuff. Typically, when I make a glass of tea, I do about 1 gram to 1.5 grams. It depends on whether I'm streaming or not. My live streams, I usually cap it around 1 or 1.2 grams. I did 1.4 tonight, which is usually like a sort of private alone, for, you know, Friday night or Saturday night or something. So we'll see how 1.4 works out for me tonight. But by 2 grams, I'm getting to the point where you're almost on the edge of like seeing trails, and the walls maybe almost look like they're moving a tiny little bit. You're right on the doorstep at about 2 grams. And so I usually try to keep it below that. Let's see if I'm too mushroomed up to catch the fancy gold. Yeah, I was going to say, I got to be pretty fucking mushroomed up not to be able to catch goldfish. Do I believe in mythical creatures like Bigfoot? No, I do not. And hello, Simple Fish, by the way. Yeah, exactly. You can get all kind of stuff at Home Depot, Lowe's. If you've got like a local garden center that sells plants and stuff in the summertime, check them out. You can often find, you know, pond plants. You can find stuff that grows fully submerged, and then you can bring them home and put them in your aquarium. Because remember, plants that are, you know, meant to grow emergent have to grow emergent. Like the difference between a Brazilian sword and an Amazon sword is an Amazon sword can grow fully submerged, whereas a Brazilian sword has to grow up and out of the water. You cannot force a Brazilian sword to just live underwater in your fish tank. It'll just die eventually. So emergent plants do need to grow emergent in most cases. Sometimes something like Creeping Jenny will grow fast enough that as the new stuff starts to die off, you can kind of trim it back and it looks like it's growing underwater. But eventually, if the leaves aren't allowed to really break the surface and float on the water or whatever, the roots will eventually die off and everything. You can't keep even Creeping Jenny growing indefinitely submerged. So if you are looking for plants, keep that in mind. But also keep in mind that you can find a lot of good stuff at places that are not aquarium centers. I'm not sure what Creeping is. I'm sure it's probably very similar to the Creeping Jenny. Speaking of mushrooms, we might fuck with my other mushrooms tonight too, or at the very least, we're going to have a look at them because this tank's almost full. We're just about to be able to move on to the next stage. In fact, let me get you set down and put out of the way. So I inoculated a bag at the first of the month. It was with the new spores that I got called Jedi Mindfuck. And long story short, after reading the instructions, I'm trying to see if I can get away with inoculating the bag with literally just like a drop of the liquid out of the syringe. And so far, as of 2 days ago, the last time I checked, I had not seen any mycelial growth or anything. So I'm not expecting to see any tonight. And if we don't, we're going to inject more spores and re-inoculate it. And I'm going to actually, you know, give it a squirt and put 1/3 of the syringe in it. Because even if I do 1/3 of the syringe, as long as it works, I'll get, you know, ounces of mushrooms out of the thing by the time it's all said and done. So dollar for dollar, I'm literally, I think the last bag I did, I wound up getting over 3 ounces out of it or something. And between if you did the total cost of the mushroom bag and the spores and everything, it was like $60. And I got 3 ounces of mushrooms out of it. And I only used about 1/3 of my spore liquid. So I got 2 more bags out of it. But if you just count the full price on that first bag, I got ounces of mushrooms for $60. So we are going to look at that. But first, let's go catch these goldfish. I don't know. Do you guys want to see me catch it? I'll do a puff or two of weed while I wait for you to answer my question. Do you want to watch me catch it with the camera down there and then see a long distance plunk, or do you want to have the camera up here and just see me put the fish in the tank rather than see that from a long distance? So you tell me what you want to see, In the meantime, I'm going to hit on some Super Silver Haze that is soaked with Tropicana Cookies hash oil. And of course, because of the mushrooms, I have super lungs and I can smoke huge amounts of weed now. But I also do need a little swig of the iced tea from time to time. All right, I think I'm going to make an executive decision and just leave the camera here. And you can watch me do it from long distance, but I'll turn the camera as we come up and release them, because that, again, scooping them out of there shouldn't be difficult. Did I already put the nut away? I sure did. Look at me putting stuff away like I'm an adult. Like somebody who doesn't have ADHD. All right. Man, these are some big puppies. What size is that? It's like holding a damn baseball. Look how big she is. All right, that's goldfish number one successfully in the tank. Here is goldfish number two, my Orlando, much smaller. It's still looking beautiful. No, I'm not licking it. I know they do look traumatized. I feel bad doing this, but I keep reminding myself they're just goldfish. They'll be fine. I'm not hurting them, but they do definitely look traumatized while I'm bringing them over here and holding them. So this is the queen of all my fish. I'm going to feel really bad for doing this to her. But it will be interesting to get her lifted up and see how big she actually is. I'm glad I have a big net. All right, calm down, girl. Calm down. Well, she is hefty. Look at that beautiful gold side and those fins. I don't know if you can hear that through the floor, but my cats are stampeding upstairs. All right, that was all the adult fish keeping responsibility stuff I had to do tonight. Like I said, I can break down, tear down the other tank tomorrow morning or whatever. I don't need to worry about that tonight. Main thing is just getting that dresser out of here tomorrow. I still don't see those orange discus mingling with everybody, but maybe we'll see that by later tonight. Wow, it's already 9:30, so we don't actually have that much tonight left, do we? All right, let me get caught up on some of these comments. Yeah, you'll see some white stuff on the caps. That's not unusual. And I don't get like a funky smell, but I get like a mushroomy smell. It has that sort of musty basement, sort of mildewy, sort of, again, it just smells earthy and mushroomy when you smell the bag. It shouldn't smell like nasty or anything. And with my first flushes, both of the times that I've started new bags, my first flush has always been a lot of really small mushrooms, and they're packed together and they grow on top of each other. The next flush will be fewer mushrooms. They'll be spaced out further, but they'll be bigger, more full size, 3 or 4 inch tall mushrooms compared to it looks like a bag of candy. When you look at I'll show it to you what I got. I don't know if you saw it the other night. I've already gone through a fair amount of them, but this will still, I still got a lot left. And you can see, partially, you can see how they're all sort of grown into clumps, but like the big caps in there, like the size of a nickel, it's a bag full of these little teeny tiny mushrooms. So that was my first flush. I got all these. Well, I got 39 grams out of my first flush, and this is what's left of it. This is Gus's. This is all that's left of Gus's family. Slowly but surely, night after night, they go in the mincer one by one, turned into tea. All right, let me get caught up on these comments, and then I will consider your look at the tank finished. And then I'm going to sit my ass down and chat for the rest of the evening. You could probably get away with the 55. I'm expecting these to get bigger, though, and they're already kind of getting too much for a 40. And so I was offered a 55 like a month ago, and I passed up on it. And then when my neighbor asked me about the 60, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do a free 60, especially I'm doing my neighbor a solid. And he also needed a 40, so I can get rid of my 40 while also getting a 60. And so it's just kind of an upgrade by a couple gallons, They may need something bigger than that by the end of their life. Eat all of them. Fuck no. Yeah, I think no, I don't think you guys want to watch me go to the hospital. Yeah, your first flush, you should get just an absolute shit ton of them. Again, they're all going to be small and packed together, but you should get a lot on your first flush, and then you'll get diminishing returns every flush after that. All right, hang on, let me get you screwed down on here again. You're all loose and wobbly. Oh, hang on a minute. I gotta get a pair of scissors, flip the little flippy thing down. There you go. How the hell did that get so loose? No wonder I was getting you guys such wonky camera angles. I'll have to have a talk with my cameraman after the show. All right, we'll set those down. Let's get the overhead light turned off. I'm actually going to unplug the light over the goldfish to reduce the trauma plus the glare that's going to be in my face while I'm sitting there. So let's just get rid of that. Perfect. Now my laptop is in a weird position. It's going to fuck me up looking up there to look at my monitor, and it's not going to be where I'm looking for. Tonight of all nights, like, where did my monitor go? Every single time I look over there, I've done that so far tonight. I've looked where my monitor always has been for the last several years. I'm slowly getting used to having to turn my head like 2 feet to the left to spot the monitor. All right, let's get that in position. Let's get my light turned on. And I think I got everything I need over there. All right, here I come, everybody. Whee! Walking around this pond is getting funner. It's getting more fun every time I do it. I swear to God, I'm standing still in the pond. It's just, the room is rotating around me. That's awesome. All right, let's get you in a better position here. Straighten your tall, wobbly neck up. Look how these mollies are all just in this tight little group right here. I see a few others around the tank, but most of the mollies are all just huddled up right there together. That's weird. They don't usually do that. Oh, right. Let's check on my mushrooms before I sit down and get too relaxed. That the other thing, you're always the growth on the mushroom bag is always going to come out from the sides and grow up. In fact, on my first flush, where the mushrooms first started growing, wasn't even out of the medium itself. It was like if you pulled the bag open, some of the mycelium was stuck to the bag and came with the bag. That little tiny bit of mycelium is where the first mushrooms actually started to growing. A lot of the mushrooms you see in that saw in that bag that I showed you came literally off of the plastic sides. So just it's all going to start on those edges. It's going to grow up from the bottom. You're going to have to dig some of it out. When I opened the bag, I split it on all four corners all the way down to the bottom and then just open it like a banana. And then that gives me the full block exposed. I can rotate it as I need to. You can dig the mushrooms out of the side of it gently. And then for your next flush, you just fold all the sides up, tape the corners, and you've got a bag again. It doesn't have to be watertight. You want air and moisture and stuff to be able to move through there. But that's how I do it. And I get a lot of goddamn mushrooms out of each one of my bags. Now, this bag, I didn't realize why it was so cheap until I got it. But this is a little bag. I'll still get a lot of mushrooms out of it if it works. But it is a really little bag compared to my other one. And I mean, you can clearly see the injection hole, and I don't see a damn bit of mycelium growing anywhere at all. Now, this looks like a bag of coffee. This thing is so small. I know the light just went out a few minutes ago, but I'll show you my other one because my second flush is just starting to come out on my other bag. Say hello to Uma, everybody. So if we look in here, you can see I got little ones growing up along the edges and coming out of the corners. I got a little one in that corner. So I don't think I let the mycelium grow in enough on this one. Hang on, let me set you down here. Got to put this clip back on the bag. I like it to be open enough that air moves through, but I don't want it wide open because you don't want it to dry out. So let's re-inoculate this bag with another squirt of the juice out of the needle. I'll have to run upstairs and get it out of the fridge. All right, come on, goddamn it. Why is this? Get the fuck in there. All right, it listens. Usually by the time I get angry, frustrated, shout, and shove it, it usually works. All right. I'm going to need the syringe. I'll need some alcohol. I still have fluid in the syringe from my original purchase, so I've still got some of those golden teachers. I can do another bag of that. with what I've got in the refrigerator upstairs. So this one with the golden teacher, I could see like some thick cloudy stuff in the middle, and you could tell that's kind of where the spores were. So every time I've done an injection, I've made sure some of that gray mass went through the needle. This just looks like water. I mean, like you can see a bubble moving around in there. It's just like there's nothing to it. And when I read the instructions, it said to just put a single drop on your slide, you know, and then put your cover plate on, and you should be able to see spores. If there's spores in every single drop, then theoretically a single drop should have inoculated that bag. But it's been since the 1st of the month, and I still am not seeing anything. And so after all this time, I think it's time to re-inoculate it. So we're gonna just hit that with a little isopropyl, make sure that's nice and sterile. I'm gonna hit that with a little bit of isopropyl, make sure it's sterile. And then I'm going to go in not very deep, and we're going to push it over this way so that you see I've got it leaning at a really severe angle, and then that way the inoculated liquid will be right up against the front, and we'll see growth as early as possible. But I'm going to put about, I don't know, that was probably a quarter of the liquid in there. You can actually see where it's running in there. I mean, look at all that liquid I just put in there. So if that didn't put some spores in there, then I'm not going to buy this brand of needle again. So let's put that away for a couple of weeks. And when we check this again in a couple of weeks, we should see all the white, you know, mycelial growth developing. All right, that's away. Let me put my syringe back in the refrigerator upstairs. So give me another minute and I'll be right back. Take the alcohol out of here. And this is just isopropyl, 70%. I buy 99.9 lab grade stuff, and then I just dilute it to 70% for household use. It's actually a whole lot cheaper doing it that way than buying it at 70% solution already. And then the other stuff that, you know, when I'm using for lab purposes, I'm working, you know, making concentrates or whatever, I can still use the 99.9%. But like I said, I dilute it down to 70% for wasteful tasks like you just saw. All right, there you go, everybody. We inoculated my other mushroom bag. And now we wait. All right. Let's see where I was. Oh, thanks, Rosie. I appreciate it. Decided the night that I'd had too much. I was going to shave away the beard and just leave the pork chops like I was talking about, but I asked my wife about it, and she's like, you got so much going on. Like, give it, like, save that for its own night. Like, let that be its own thing. You got a lot going on tonight. And I was like, yeah, that's true. We'll wait. My wife usually gives good advice. All right, let me see here. Hang on a second here. I'll get to some of these questions and skim through the ones I can ignore. I have a misting spray bottle, and usually 2 or 3 times a day I'll open the bag up and I'll mist enough to get like droplets all over the bag on the inside, and then I blow into it to get all the swirling, you know, mist out, and then I close the bag back up. That does get, they say not to like get the mushrooms or the mycelium itself wet. It's mushrooms. The chance of potentially getting like mildew or mold or something growing in there is why they're saying not to do it. But that's the method I've always used. Again, I'm not squirting it right onto the mycelium. I'm sort of spraying it all on the sides of the bags, but it's mist and it's being sprayed every damn where. I'm sure those mushrooms and the mycelium's getting wet, but most of it goes on the sides of the bags. And I do that 2 or 3 times a day. All right, let's see. Where was I? I flicked my hand and it scrolled my damn comments all the way back up. Well, if you don't open it, you'll never get your first flush. You have to open the bag to get it to actually start fruiting. Hey, Simple Fish. No, we don't get elk or moose or anything like that around here. We just get the deer. A lot of horses. I don't think they count there. They don't have antlers. I've already done that experiment, Anna. I tried it with the first batch, but the mycelium I took after it was all sort of dying off, and I thought I could get some of it to sort of restart a new colony, and nothing happened with that. So this time when I did it, I had explained that some of the stuff had come off the sides. I took some of that, and then I did take one chunk of the mycelium that didn't have any mushrooms or anything, but it was still like white and fuzzy and like pristine looking. And I broke that off and I put it into some of my soil. And that's covered up, sitting in darkness right now, because I want to find out the same thing if I can do that. I don't know. The bags to me just seem easier. I thought about doing a mono tub or trying to do it in tubs or whatever. And the bags have just been so easy and they're so inexpensive for me. It's like the difference between making cuttings of my, now that seeds are cheap and available and I can just get them, like it's just easier for me to buy new seeds than it is to make cuttings anymore. And so doing the mono tub seems more pain in the ass to me than it's worth than simply just buying some bags. But I've had really good luck with the bags. Elk are scary, but moose are scarier. Let's see. All right, Judge Dredd's already probably gone, so I can say good night. The Van Buren. Yeah. You can get fungus and stuff growing in your lungs. That's why they always say to avoid like the black mold and stuff like that. It's the spores. Those spores can get up in your sinuses or down in your lungs and start breeding, and then it fucking kills you because you've literally got mold growing in your lungs and your brain and shit. So yeah, mold spores are the fucking real deal, dude. You should be really careful around different kind of molds and stuff. I don't think you'd ever get any mushrooms growing, but if you inhale some of the spores, the mycelium might start developing, to a small degree. I could see that. I saw a video. Like, I'll never get this out of my fucking mind because losing my vision is just one of those things that I'd like rather lose my hands, I think, than my eyes. But this dude, he got a mold spore up in his sinuses, and the doctors basically gave him 48 hours to either decide to have his face cut out, his face amputated, or he could just die, and say his goodbyes. He'd have a few weeks or whatever to say his goodbyes if he didn't want to do this. So he's like, yeah, I guess cut my face out. And so they went in from his eyes all the way down to his upper jaw, and they removed everything back and cleaned his sinuses and everything out. And if you've never seen the inside of a head, it's a lot of hollow, empty space inside your head. So to do all that, they had to remove his eyeballs, his nose, his upper jaw. Like that was just all gone. And they gave him this like mask to wear as a prosthetic. It looked like a mask, but when he took it off, it was just like this bottom jaw sticking out, and then this fucking big cavern of a hole where his face used to be. It was disturbing, and so he survived. They got it out of there, but that's what they had to do to get this mold spore out of his sinuses to save his life. The wall between your sinuses, like when you get something up in there and it's bothering your sinuses, or you get a sinus infection, the wall between that, it's almost like a membrane between that and your actual brain cavity. So a sinus infection that gets too bad, if it actually ruptures that membrane, that infection goes into your fucking brain cavity. It's really that close. Like some of your teeth, if you like, one of my teeth is missing, and so my upper jaw's gotten a little bit thin, I could take like an ice pick and just push it through the bone. It's about that much bone, and then it would just be in my skull cavity. It's like that's all that separates the inside of my mouth from my skull cavity is this little piece of bone in my upper jaw. It's surprising how delicate the inner workings of your head are. So don't fuck with like molds and spores and shit like that. It's a 1 in a million chance that it happens to you, but the consequences are pretty damn dire if it does. So hopefully I didn't freak anybody out too much. It seems like it only seems to have freaked Xenia out. I still got 19 people watching. That's amazing. Usually I go through a spiel like that and I got 8 people left. Well, that's how that brain-eating amoeba gets there. You go swimming in water and it gets up into your sinuses, and then it just punches right through into your brain cavity. And or sometimes it can go in your ear canals, and there's a lot of ways that it can pretty easily get into your brain cavity that way. Yeah, man, the fucking planet Earth is a goddamn horror show. Like, you don't need to go into like these sci-fi movies to find like absolutely terrifying shit that should haunt your nightmares. We live amongst them every day. Yeah, there you go, Cornish. If you can find the video, I don't know how young he is. You might scar him because it fucking scarred me, and I was a 30-some-year-old adult when I saw that shit. But yeah, I think about that guy a lot. I don't know if he's still alive or not. It was years and years ago I saw that, but I do think about that a lot. What that would be like is just like one day you're okay, and next day the doctor says, I need to remove your eyeballs, your nose, your mouth. I basically need to just amputate your face. I'll give you a nice little mask you can wear, or the alternative is you can die. I'm still on the fence. I've never been in the actual situation, so I assume that would factor in the will to live. It's easy to say I would do this or I would do that until you're in that situation, but I'm not in that situation, and at this point I'm still like I don't know. I'm still on the fence about that one. So what a fucking freak show. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. That's how you do it. They say if you've ever seen those warning signs where it said, swimming is not recommended, or if you do swimming, keep your head above the water. That's what that's all about. They don't want those amoeba getting up into your sinuses, getting into your ear canals, getting into your eyes, or into your mouth. Like all those provide some easy access for something like an amoeba to just get to your fucking brain. So if you ever do have to go like in a murky, nasty place or whatever, keep your mouth closed, head above the water, do what you got to do to get to the other side of it or whatever, and then get the fuck out of it. But don't let it get up in your sinuses or anything like that. Let's see. Well, I have a food dehydrator that I use to dehydrate the larger batches just because it's quicker. But when I dry just a few small ones, I actually have my diesel space heater that just blows a lot of warm air. And I position that just far enough away to keep it at about 105 to 110 degrees. And I do keep a very close check on the temperature to make sure it doesn't go above that. But I have dried them out in front of that, and that's a lot of really warm air moving over it. So it actually dries it surprisingly quickly, like 5 hours. I was able to dry those two mushrooms. In my dehydrator, I had a really cheap one, and it was just on or off. You just plugged it in, and it had a timer. That was the only thing. That ruined them. That cooked them too hot. So I had to buy a dehumidifier or a food dehydrator, but you got to get a food dehydrator that has a setting on it. And you want to keep the setting at like 120 or below. I keep it set at like the 110 to 113 range. But you want to keep them under 125 degrees to be safe. I think you can go up to about 150, but you're getting really close to where you're actually going to ruin the mushrooms at that temperature. There's no need. Just dry them in a dehydrator. It takes a little longer, but keep them at 110 degrees or so. The whole batch took me 12 or 14 hours or something to get them fully dried. If I can figure out where I left my phone, I think I left it on the charger in here. I'm not sure if I did a short video actually, and I shared it with the Discord. Let's see if I still got it on the phone. That's not what I want to do. If I do, it's going to be back here a ways because I take a lot of dumb pictures of a lot of dumb shit. Oh, does anybody want to see what Zini looked like when he was a baby? That's a Zini baby photo. That's what I got out of my first flush. On the second batch. Gives you a better look at them. And that's on the dehydrator. Got them all spread out on the food dehydrator. All right, god damn it. I know somewhere back here. I got all these pictures of cats and food. More cats, more food. You asked me before when I grind the mushrooms up. That was Gus. That was the actual Gus. That was the mushroom I took the photo of Gus. And that's what Gus looked like 30 seconds later. So that's what I grind them up to when I make my tea. And that's what Gus's expression was right before I ground him up and made him into tea. That squeaker. All right, guys. I know I shot a video of this shit. There it is. Jesus. Crikey. All right, I don't need to actually play the volume. I'll just let you actually watch the video and you can see it in real time. So you can see how I've got the bag all folded down. I was just pointing at where I took a couple out early. And this was premature. I just wanted some to trip on over the weekend. And so none of the caps are really fully opened yet. And I didn't show any video of me actually like digging them out of the mass or anything, but that's what I got out of my first flush. You see what I mean about how they grew all out of the bag? And on the side over here that you can't really see, I don't know why I was pointing the wrong side. On this side over here, like I had to pull that bag all the way out and down and like dig them out of the side of the substrate. So it wasn't fully ready, but the mushrooms aren't like weed where the psilocybin's not really in. I mean, the THC, you don't really want to harvest weed when it's premature. It's like fruit. You've got to let it ripen and be ready, and then you can harvest it. with mushrooms, as soon as they start developing, if you want to pluck them that early, you can. In fact, they're really concentrated with psilocybin when they're really small like that. You'll get more in the long run if you let them get bigger and all that kind of stuff. But there's no harm. And if you just want them and you just want to go ahead and harvest because you want them tonight, taking those small ones like that is fine. It's not like they have to fully open to suddenly then get the psilocybin in them. As soon as they start developing, they're already potent. And again, them little tiny fuckers are potent as shit. No, this is the wrong. I need my timer. I almost reached up there to set my phone on top of the tank. I would have just like gone plunk and just set my fucking. I noticed the goldfish swimming past that's when my brain clicked. They're like, "There's no top on that tank. Don't do that." Oh, that would have sucked. So let me not shoot into the goldfish pond. I just knocked that over and almost fell into the goldfish pond. No, I definitely never eat them fresh. I don't eat them at all. I think they're gross. Oh, let me see. Where was I? He was an early bloomer. That's exactly what I did. And the very first one I got from Amazon, the dehydrator, was like a $15 job, and you just plugged it in. It was fine for weed because weed can be, up to over 200 degrees, and you're not going to destroy any of the important stuff in there. And so it never mattered when I wanted to dry weed really fast. I was just drying it really fast so I could make hash oil or hash or something out of it. The mushrooms, the psilocybin, is a much more delicate molecule, and it can't really. I think the destruction point is like 156 degrees or something. It's just over 150 degrees, and you're going to destroy, the psilocybin in there. And when I ran some stuff in my other one, I checked the temperature while it was, going, and the mushrooms themselves were getting up to about 160 degrees. They were just above the point. When I shot the gun down on some of the parts of plastic, that was even hotter. But the surface, the top part, was still 160 degrees in that thing, and so it just ruined them all. So the one that has the adjustment on it, that was like $25 or something. That was the expensive food dehydrator. It's just a fan and a heating element. So the one with the setting is a little more complicated, but not much. Goldfish are chilling. Two of them are asleep, and then the medium-sized one I just saw sort of, relaxedly swimming around. But if you look over there, you can see they're all down. Can you see my finger? They're all right in this corner down here, sleeping underneath the anubias, kind of laying low, hiding like they always used to. No, I tried breaking the mycelium up afterwards. Let's see. All right, Zany, you're rolling out. You made it all the way till 10. So I'm actually going to start getting out of here too. We got to reset up where my first position is now. Hash is easy. You don't make hash. I get dry sift hash, which is basically just taking, weed. You can either grind it up or take the whole buds, however you want to do it. But you just shake it and sift it through a really fine mesh. You know how weed grinders have the screen in the bottom, and you can open that bottom canister and you get all the keef. Keef, if you know what keef is, that's hash. If you want to think of keef, if you want to call it loose hash, then that's fine. You could just call keef loose hash. But if you want, traditional hash that comes in like a bar or a block, you take keef and squeeze it together until it sticks together in a little block, and then you call it hash. But that's all hash is. It's just keef. So you don't really make it. You just kind of collect it. As far as the mycelium goes, I was really curious. The way I knew it was done, yeah, exactly. It's pressed keef. That's all it is. There are other ways to get hash. You can roll it. You can get the hash oil. You can press it and get a hash sort of extraction. But basic simple hash that you're thinking about is just pressed keef. My final flush, when I knew it was done, I did what I always do. You harvest the mushrooms as gently as possible. You leave the mycelium as intact. I don't tear the mushrooms off the side of that mycelium. I use scissors and I cut it at the base, and I leave a little bit of the base of the mushroom there, to not damage the mycelium. Put the bag back together, mostly kind of close it back up so the air can move. Put it back, and about a week later, you'll see new mushrooms coming out. I did that every time, and the final time I did it, I got 2 or 3 real small mushrooms. They kind of stopped developing halfway through their growth and just sort of petered out. And after I harvested them, I put it back and I waited, and nothing ever happened again. And after about 2 weeks, I actually cut it open to see what it was like on the inside. I tried putting plant food and moisture and, tried to like revitalize it. And when I cut the inside of it open, it was just like dry, powdery sawdust. It was just nothing to it. It was just dead. It had run its course. And remember, when the mushroom opens and spores, it basically like an annual plant. After it drops its seeds, it's done. It dies off. If you want it to keep growing, you got to get it before that happens. So make sure when you do harvest, it's okay to let them open and let the skirt tear, but harvest them pretty much as soon as they're fully open. If you wait another day, they're going to go to spore. And once those spores drop and, the spores are now on the mycelium and everything, you'll get less and less, additional flushes. As long as you harvest before it goes to spore every time, it'll just keep giving you more mushrooms until it eventually just runs out of food. It will eventually just run out of all of the nutrients it needs, and it'll just die off. But I got 6 flushes out of my first bag. Again, the last 2 was only like 2 or 3 mushrooms. But 6 times I got more mushrooms off of it after harvesting and putting it back. I got 6 batches of mushrooms off of it. So again, the grand total was just over 3 ounces. It was like 3¼ ounces off my first bag. That's a lot of mushrooms for one bag. All right, good night, Rosie. Said good night to Zini. Got to put a lot in there if you want it to be strong. Toenails. Everybody loves toenails. All right, everybody. Tune in again Sunday night because we got the goldfish moved. So now my next task for tomorrow morning is to actually get that tank broken down, disassembled enough that I can get it off of that dresser. The missus and I believe the 2 of us together, once we pull the drawers out of that, should be able to get that out of the house. We're going to take that, donate it tomorrow, and then that'll either be tomorrow evening or Sunday morning. My buddy next door is going to bring over a 60-gallon tank with a stand, and we're going to be able to put the shrimp tank on the stand below, and then we're going to have a 60-gallon tank up top that we're going to fill and scape and do whatever we're going to do to it. And once that's up and ready to go, we're going to move the goldfish out of the tank we just put them in tonight. They're going to go back into the 60, which is supposed to be their, forever home, hopefully. So that's the plan for Sunday. Make sure you tune in. You don't want to miss that. And I am going to get on with the rest of my mushroom evening. I think I've been playing it pretty cool tonight, but you guys have no idea how much those mushrooms, I drank more than it's hard to judge. I did 1.4 grams, which is like pushing the upper limit of what I will do on a live stream. I did spread it out into 2 phases, so it didn't hit me all at once. But once I get done here and I go sit down and I'm able to just like start looking around, I'm really going to realize how intense this is right now. So it was a good time though. Join us again Sunday night. Like I said, we're going to get all that work done. So if you enjoy the doing stuff, physical activity kind of live streams, we'll have another one of those on Sunday night. After that, I'll probably be back to just tripping and hanging out. But we do have an empty 40 now that we're going to be doing something with. And so stand by for that, because that should be pretty exciting. Again, we're going to just do something different. I swear this is not going to be another angelfish, black skirt tetra, pleco on the bottom, tank. It's going to look different. It's going to have some, interesting fish in it that I don't normally buy. I'm going to make a trip down to House of Tropicals rather than PetSmart. So we'll see what we do with it. There's lots of potential there. We still got to figure out how we're going to scape out the tank and everything on Sunday night. Now it's a goldfish tank, so it's probably not going to get much scaping, maybe an Anubias or two on the bottom and a small rock structure here and there for them to hide under, but it's probably going to be about all that goes into that tank. But anyway, look forward to that Sunday night. In the meantime, I'm going to say thanks for watching tonight. Hope you guys have a good time, and tune in Sunday, and I will see you for that. All right, everybody, so long, and thanks for all the fish. Good night.